It's been 20 years since Andrew Cannanon's murder spree. His fifth and final victim was Versace.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most well-known and monstrous serial killers who were active in the 1990s.
There was something about this guy that just made me uncomfortable, and I've jokingly said it made the spidey sense tingle.
Number 10, Danny Rolling.
We had no way of reaching her. The phone hadn't been installed yet. She hadn't called us. And finally, the Powells, who lived closer, went over there.
Have you ever seen Scream? Well, Ghostface and the story as a whole was largely inspired by the crime spree of Danny Rolling. He's perhaps better known as the Gainesville Ripper, his name coming from the Florida city in which he committed his murders. Over the course of 4 days in August of 1990, Rolling murdered a total of 5 college students after breaking into their apartments.
He went in, I followed him into the apartment and saw the young lady on the bed, and you could see her in a bad position.
He was eventually arrested after robbing a supermarket, and investigators were able to link him to the Gainesville killings. While in prison, Rolling would also confess to a triple homicide in Shreveport in November of 1989, bringing his total body count to 8. After feasting on lobster, Rolling was executed via lethal injection on October 25, 2006.
He got down on his knees and looked up with his flashlight in the bedroom.
And he looked at me and he said, "Don't look. You don't want to see this."
Number 9, Robert Lee Yates.
There's no sense in asking someone like Yates, "Why did you kill all those women?" He wanted to.
The creepy thing about serial killers is that they often hide in plain sight, posing as everymen with respectable jobs. Such was the case of Robert Lee Yates, who served in the U.S. Army while committing his grisly murders. Between 1975 and 1998, Yates killed at least 16 people, with many of his crimes occurring in the city of Spokane, Washington.
Couldn't believe it. I was shocked. Yeah, especially when I saw him on the news after they had arrested him and he's walking through the hallway. It felt like it was someone else, but that's my dad.
His violent streak ramped up in the mid-90s after retiring as an aircraft pilot. And between 1996 and 1998, he murdered at least 13 women in the area of East Sprague Avenue. Yates was finally arrested after a traffic stop linked his white Corvette to one of the victims, and he is currently serving his life sentence inside Washington State Penitentiary.
When they finally arrested Yates, nobody could believe that guy was the serial killer.
Number 8, Joel Rifkin.
Oh, Aileen, he's normal. Your boyfriend is a normal guy. He just happens to have the same name as one of the worst serial killers in the history of New York.
You might recognize the name Joel Rifkin from an episode of Seinfeld, as Aileen gets a boyfriend with the same name and begs him to change it owing to its notoriety. This episode was released in November 1993, just 5 months after Rifkin was arrested, his Mazda pickup containing the body of his final victim, Tiffany Bresciani.
I came running up, and he was just sitting there, and he put his hands up like this. As I approached, that's when I noticed stench.
Rifkin is thought to have murdered 17 women in New York, with all but one murder occurring in the early 1990s. The victims were often killed by Rifkin after being picked up on the street, and their remains were deposited in remote areas and even roadside garbage bags. He was eventually found guilty of 9 of the 17 murders and sentenced to 203 years in prison.
It takes someone who is coldly psychopathic, and by that I mean no guilt, no empathy, no remorse. Somebody who damn well knows what they're doing and knows it's wrong and trying desperately to not get caught.
Number 7, Gary Ray Bowles.
It's not hard to kill somebody. You can kill somebody pretty easy if you have the mindset for it.
Better known as the I-95 killer owing to his primary hunting ground, Gary Ray Bowles murdered 6 men in 1994, with most of his victims living near the Interstate 95 highway. His crimes occurred across a period of 8 months, his first murder occurring on March 15th and his final on November 16th.
He needs to be punished. And I think he needs to have his life taken just like he took all these other people's lives.
Throughout that time, Bowles even found himself on the FBI's most wanted list, often posing as a sex worker, killing his clients and then stealing their credit cards. According to Bowles, it all began after his girlfriend received an abortion upon learning that Bowles was a sex worker who often engaged with other men. He then developed a violent hatred towards gay people and began targeting them as a form of misplaced revenge.
I guess it just opened up a monster.
Allegedly spurring him on to a mission to kill.
I was on a real adrenaline high, and from there on, it was just downhill rage.
Number 6, Andre Chikatilo.
They had not dealt with anyone of his caliber before. They were reluctant to admit that things like this would occur in a communist state.
Between 1978 and 1990, Andre Chikatilo committed a series of brutal and sadistic murders that shocked the Soviet Union. Operating mainly in the Rostov Oblast, he was convicted of an astounding 52 killings, with 8 occurring in 1990 alone. Chikatilo often lured destitute victims from train stations or bus stops with offers of help before murdering them in remote areas.
Walking between the gravestones of a small public cemetery, Chikatilo brought them to the site of a shallow, unmarked grave.
He then mutilated the bodies, and while rumors of cannibalism circulated, Chikatilo denied it during his trial. Said legal proceedings were bizarre, with Chikatilo frequently singing, shouting, and rambling incoherently in court. On February 14, 1994, he was executed by a single bullet to the back of the head, the Soviet Union's standard method of capital punishment at the time.
Please don't turn around.
Number 5, Andrew Cunanan.
Guess who I met?
Andrew!
Guess. You have to guess. Johnny Versace.
Between April and July of 1997, Andrew Cunanan murdered a total of 5 people. His first victim was a friend, Jeffrey Trail, whom Cunanan beat to death with a claw hammer in a Minneapolis apartment. He proceeded to kill his ex-boyfriend, David Mattson, real estate developer Lee Miglin, and cemetery caretaker William Reese, who was killed solely for his vehicle.
Get on your knees.
Sir, if you're thinking of killing me, please hear this. I'm a married man. We have a son, Troy. And sir, I'd very much like to see them again.
But his most famous kill by far is that of fashion mogul Gianni Versace, who was shot point blank and in broad daylight on the steps of his Miami mansion. Cunanan ultimately took his own life in the middle of an enormous manhunt, leaving his motives for the killings completely unclear.
A marvelously good-looking man talked about the years he spent with Versace in great detail, but also talked about the controversy about whether or not Versace ever met Andrew Cunanan, and that was considered to be one of the foundational reasons for this murder.
Number 4, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka.
Breaking news involving one of our country's most notorious killers, Paul Bernardo. He has just been denied parole again. Marks the second time Bernardo has been denied freedom. His first was 2 years ago, and that was rejected in just 30 minutes.
Some of the most infamous and disturbing crimes in Canadian history were committed by husband and wife duo Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Shortly before Christmas of 1990, the villainous duo drugged Homolka's sister Tammy, and she died after choking on her own vomit. Her death was ruled as an alcohol-related accident, as the duo had spiked her rum and eggnog. They got off scot-free and proceeded to kidnap and murder 2 further girls, Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French.
Remember, he encased their bodies in cement after dismembering them. I mean, I know we're in a different day and age of low self-esteem and a different culture, but it doesn't matter whether you're in 1995 or 2021. This was not a spur-of-the-moment, one-day spree.
When they were finally arrested, Homolka struck an extremely controversial plea deal, offering to rat on Bernardo in exchange for just 12 years in prison. He was sentenced to life. Homolka was released in 2005 and currently lives in Quebec.
Canada's notorious schoolgirl killer is an occasional volunteer at a Montreal school. City News has learned Karla Homolka has been in the classroom and on a field trip.
Number 3, Aileen Wuornos.
And now Central Florida is being threatened with news of yet another round of serial killings. 8 men have been shot to death in cold blood on Central Florida highways.
Most people know Aileen Wuornos from Charlize Theron's Oscar-winning performance in Monster. However, That film has been criticized for portraying Wuornos in a far more sympathetic light than she deserved. While Monster painted her as a victim, she was in reality a manipulative and conniving serial killer who murdered 7 men between 1989 and 1990.
Didn't think about running back in a car or anything. I would start shooting out from out of the car.
Wuornos claimed that the men had assaulted her while she was engaging in sex work and that she killed them in self-defense. However, the prosecution successfully argued that the murders were financially motivated and that her self-defense claims were not credible. She was also found to be a clinical psychopath in a psychological assessment following her arrest. Wuornos ultimately received 6 death sentences and was executed on October 9, 2002.
The heck with what... It has nothing to do with the number killed. It's the principle. But they're saying, if there's a number, no. Self-defense is self-defense no matter how many times it is. I don't care if it's 100 times.
Number 2, Samuel Little.
How does someone like this continue to move around the country and continue to wreak this carnage and not have any of these charges stick enough to take him off the street?
It's amazing how few people have heard of Samuel Little, considering he's the most prolific serial killer in American history. While he was only convicted of 8 murders, the FBI has confirmed at least 60 victims, and Little has confessed to 93. Like many serial killers, he often targeted people who were less likely to be missed or thoroughly investigated, including sex workers and destitute victims he found on the street.
But society doesn't see those people.
He picked people that he thought no one would notice if they were gone.
He also tended to strangle his victims, leaving behind little physical evidence for police to work on. As such, Little went undetected for decades, his crimes beginning as early as the 1970s and stretching well into the 90s. He received 4 life sentences and died in prison in 2020 at the age of 80.
In that little road up there, on the side of that little road, she was like partially concealed by vegetation. Left her there.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, Jeffrey Dahmer.
A gruesome story leads off our newscast.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment, and now they wonder if they've uncovered some kind of death factory.
Samuel Little may be more prolific, but it was Jeffrey Dahmer who got all the attention. That speaks to the heinous severity of his crimes, the extent of which are infamous today. While Dahmer committed his first murder in 1978, his crimes ramped up in the late 80s before exploding in the early 90s. Between 1990 and 1991, Dahmer murdered 12 victims, with all being killed and stored in his Milwaukee apartment.
Do you know what started it? Was there any kind of incident that you can remember?
To this day, I don't know what started it. And the person to blame is sitting right across from you. That's the only person. Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
It was during this time that Dahmer also attempted to make mindless zombies by pouring things like hydrochloric acid and boiling water into his victims' brains. Dahmer was later beaten to death in prison by Christopher Scarver, who said that God told him to kill Dahmer in an act of divine justice.
You may convince yourself that God has forgiven you, but you can never escape God's wrath. It always catches up with you.
Do you know of any other prolific serial killers in this time period? Let us know in the comments below.
It's one of the most horrifying stories that I had ever covered.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.